Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom Grossi, and today we're going to break down the top 10 after Week 10 in the NFL. And a couple notes just before we get started with this. I wanted to do a big shout out and thank you to everyone who reached out to me yesterday. I had to euthanize, I didn't even know they could do this, my 13-year-old lizard, who I've had since I was 16 years old. It was a really, really rough day. Today was a really, really rough day. But I really appreciate a lot of people reaching out, and thank you for that. Thank you. And also want to do a big shout out and thank you to a brand new Patreon, Santos Gunningham, over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy, joining the King tier. A very big thank you and shout out to you, Santos. Much, much, much appreciated. Now, obviously, Week 10 in the NFL was absolutely insane. I think it was the worst predictions I've had ever, because I just picked everyone that should have won, and nobody did. And so there's going to be some movement this week in the top 10. I think that as we get into November, this is where the teams that are playoff bound are really going to start separating themselves from the pack. But that being said, there's still a lot of movement going on within the top 10, and I wouldn't be surprised if for the next few weeks things get shaken up a bit. So let's start with number 10, a team that I never thought would enter the top 10 this season. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's not in a lot of top 10s, but I have to give credit where credit is due. I've been sleeping on this team a bit because I think everybody has, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, before you start cracking up and go, April Fools in November, Tom, you're a few months late. They've won 4 straight games, and all their opponents have not been easy. The Chargers, who, listen, they beat the Packers. They were able to take care of the Colts. Yes, obviously, they didn't have Jacoby Brissett, but they have been taking care of business, and they took care of the Rams yesterday as well. They are playing some damn good defense, and Minkah Fitzpatrick is a dream right now. And so he must be the happiest person in the world that he's not playing in Miami. But they haven't lost since Week 5 in overtime against the Ravens. And so they're taking one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFL, into overtime. And listen, they even had a close matchup with the San Francisco 49ers. And so while they obviously struggled out of the gate, I think that they have rebounded very, very nicely, and I think they deserve a shout out and a spot within the top 10. Are they going to be able to keep this up? Who knows? I mean, there is still a shot that they could compete for a wild card spot. I don't think they're going to catch the Ravens within the division, but, you know, look out for the Steelers potentially making some noise in November and December. Then moving on to number 9, the Kansas City Chiefs at 6-4. Oof. A tough loss against the Tennessee Titans as a field goal, or a last-second field goal try, unfortunately, was not successful. And looking at this, Patrick Mahomes made some incredible plays on Sunday and really was kind of just driving that offense, and, you know, the jumping throws and the long passes for TDs. But it's that defense, is what we've been saying now for weeks. That defense needs to get sorted out. And listen, they're lucky enough that the Chargers are struggling. The Raiders, who knows what's going on with them, and the Broncos are broncoing it right now. But the Chiefs, I have no doubt, will make the playoffs, and I have no doubt will still be successful. But sitting at 6-4 after Week 10, they definitely have some things that need to be sorted out. Then moving on to number 8, we have the 6-3 Houston Texans. Had a bye this week. And, you know, again, the Texans are great with Deshaun Watson. That defense has stepped up when they needed to. The last time they played was the whooping that they put on the Jacksonville Jaguars over in London. And they have a really, really tough game, and what should be a great game, probably the game of the week next week against the Ravens. And so they'll really be able to compete with what the NFL, or the best that the NFL has to offer at this point. And that should really test them as a team if they could slow down this Ravens offense. Then moving on to number 7, we have the 7-3 Minnesota Vikings. Good win against the Dallas Cowboys. They went in, and, you know, Kirk Cousins and the whole primetime Kirk, he showed up. after going super duper conservative last week and losing in the second half against the Chiefs. This is a nice rebound for them. That first half, they were looking great. They were dominating the Cowboys on pretty much every single front, and they let them come back a bit in the second half. But they're still playoff contenders for right now. I hope they drop off the cliff any minute now. But for right now, the Minnesota Vikings for me are sitting at number 7. Then moving on to number 6 in a move that will probably get me some looks. And how could you put them down at number 6? That is the Seattle Seahawks, who are sitting at 8-2. Now, Seattle, obviously last night, rallying, winning a huge game against the San Francisco 49ers, ending their undefeated streak, and just a great game and a great matchup. And so why are they sitting at number 6? Well, in all honesty, they really easily could have lost that game, right? So if the 49ers kicker nails that field goal, we're not even talking about this. But their defense were able to hold Jimmy G in check. Jimmy G, after having a great week against the Cardinals, fell back down to earth a little bit against the Seahawks. And that defense on both sides, didn't look as prevalent. The 49ers defense giving Russell Wilson some problems, but then they adjusted well in the second half. And so right now, it's not that the Seahawks are bad, that they're down at number 6, but they've been in these super close competitive games, and they were able to pull this one out, which is great, which is wonderful. But I still have a lot of questions on what's going on the defensive side of that ball, and they could have very easily lost this game. Yes, they did win, and that's why they are in the top 6. But I wouldn't be surprised if Russell Wilson's able to carry this team even further up the ranks. But for right now, considering that they went into overtime with the Buccaneers and nearly lost that game, I'm comfortable with them sitting at number 6. Then moving on to number 5, you had the 8-2 Green Bay Packers, not moving after last week. Had a hard-fought win and a bounce back after getting decimated by the LA Chargers last week. They have a bye next week, and then they date with San Francisco, which should be an incredible game. But the Packers obviously still have some questions at defense, but listen, they held it when it counted, holding Christian McCaffrey to just a little over 100 yards on the ground, and obviously that goal line defensive stand at the very end. The offense seemed to get into gear a little bit. Aaron Jones having an amazing day, pulling a hat trick, getting over 90 yards on the ground, and also 3 touchdowns. And so this is the Packers team that can get very dangerous. We had Isaiah Campbell come back, which was great. He was a great lift for this defense. And hopefully, getting into the stretch, if the Packers are able to get a first-round bye, which right now they're slotted at the number 2 spot, they could potentially play for the number 1 spot and unseat the 49ers in a couple weeks. So it'll be interesting to see if they're able to keep this momentum going. Then moving on to number 4, you have the 8-1 New England Patriots. They had a bye as well last week, and they have the Eagles next week, in which should be a great game as it's a Super Bowl matchup from a couple years ago. Patriots, again, they're not really a whole lot of movement going on. 1, because they didn't play, but 2, because, again, there's still a lot of questions about the Patriots. Are they 8-1 because of their soft schedule for the first 8 games? And did they just have like an unlucky game against the Ravens and they're going to continue to lose some of these close games? Because their next 4 games are not necessarily easy. So we'll see if Bill Belichick and crew are able to move back up to the rankings. But right now, I'm pretty comfortable with them at number 4. Then, sitting at number 3, you have the 7-2 New Orleans Saints. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, number 3, the Seahawks should be in their spot, the Saints should be lower, but here's why I'm not jumping the gun on the Saints. Yes, they had a pitiful loss against the Falcons. Their offense looked bad, their defense looked bad, and it actually made the Falcons look good, which is overall just bad. But what I'm comparing this to is the loss that the Packers had against the Chargers last week. And so right now it's a one-off in that they lost a bad game against a divisional rival, which could go either way. If you recall, they struggled, and I'm pretty sure they lost against the Buccaneers. Was that week 1? Or at least they almost lost to the Buccaneers week 1 last year and then went on a tear. And so I'm looking at this as right now I'm not going to drop them or have them plummet in the power rankings because I see this team bouncing back. They're too talented not to. The defense didn't have a good day. That offense didn't have a good day. I expect them to rebound next week. And if they don't, then they're going to start plummeting a little bit more. Then sitting at number 2, you have the no longer undefeated 8-1 San Francisco 49ers. A game in which they could have easily won a tough divisional matchup, but missed field goals. Rough. And they also didn't use Coleman a whole lot in the running game Neither with Breida. That defense let up a bit in the second half and allowed Russell Wilson to pull some magic. Jimmy G was able to come back, though, and get the offense in position to at least tie the game, and then obviously forcing it into overtime. A really, really close game, and, I'm looking forward to seeing these teams play again. But right now, for me, they're sitting at number 2. Then finally, at number 1, you have the 7-2 Baltimore Ravens. And I'm looking at this Ravens team, and while you saw the inconsistencies in the beginning of the season, right, getting blown out by teams like the Browns, again, divisional game, I thought that potentially the Bengals might put up a fight because it's another divisional team, what have you, but they won 49-13 after knocking off the Patriots and making it look pretty easy. I know that the Patriots had some points where it looked like they might come back, but the Ravens had complete control of that game. They continued to look great. Lamar Jackson, good God. Yeah, his name is definitely in the MVP running right now. They looked great. The defense looked great. And yes, I know the Bengals suck, and they're a terrible team, but it's always tough playing a divisional opponent, and the Ravens made it look easy. And so, with that being said, I think the way that they've been playing over the past few weeks is warranted of the number 1 spot. They have a tough game against the Texans next week, but right now Lamar Jackson and company are sitting firmly at that number 1 spot for me until proven otherwise. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. What are your rankings? Let me know. You can always find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or at TomGrossiComedy, all social media, see down below. Check out Patcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the Patreon members over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy. But thank you so much for watching. We'll do an NFL Week 10 recap later this evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.